After finishing the scratch-built crossing, scratch-built number 5 turnout, and scratch-built three-way turnout, as I suggested I might, I went back to doing scenery. So here we are in Falls Creek, and I have ballasted, painted the rails, and added some initial vegetation, some ground foam, cinders, and then used some different colors of grout and so forth just to put a base on. Probably add a little bit of underbrush and some shrubs. Also added a set of LEDs, just a real short strip here in the cutout of the backdrop just to illuminate that a little. The brown painted area will be the Falls Creek Tower, so that'll someday get constructed, but at least I've got a spot for it, and at least the beginnings of an access road, although this tower was out of service long before 1974, so the access road might not have to get much more defined than that. Added some trees along the backdrop, and I still have some work to do in this direction to shield the view past the backdrop, but in this direction I've just about finished, so really can't see in there, which is good. And as I had previously shown, have the little bits, areas of ties where both railroads removed a main about maybe a year prior to 1974, and then static grass. In the back side of the yard here. So I still need to work on Du Bois Yard, but made some progress scenery wise. Also started working on a, probably won't call this a public crossing, so I don't think this will have any signage. I'm going to call this a private crossing, both for the creosote plant, which will access at least their lumber yard this way, and this will just be a maintenance drive into Du Bois Yard, and they have a little maintenance shack there. Obviously this will all get weathered, and then this will be the access drive for the team track. Probably put a concrete ramp up for unloading boxcars. First time I've tried doing this as well, I typically just use joint compound that's, you know, undyed, but this I added some flat black paint to, knowing that I'd have to scrape out the flangeways, and in doing that I figured, well, if I dye the joint compound when I scrape out the flangeways, it should stay the same color. It gets a little lighter, and I still can, you know, we'll paint the rails and so forth. So just an experiment. We'll see how that works. I know there's a lot of other ways to do it using some of the newer products from the craft stores, but some of these very narrow, kind of beat up access roads that are, you know, kind of paved but sort of stone, I figured using just the joint compound method would be better, and I can, you know, manipulate the edges a little bit more and be able to create a blended approach. But yeah, I even did the Penn Central line, painted and ballasted that track. So coming along in this spot. Over in the engine service facility, also on scenery, I have started adding some extruded foam to take up the transition between the plywood and the edge of the helix. So that transition is in progress now, and just with a Sharpie, just like over in the other yard, I'm going to draw, I've drawn up some potential access roads. That'll be KD Tower at some point, I think. Totally in the wrong spot, but I just didn't allow for it in the design. So it's coming along a little. And I think I'd also talked about doing a diesel fuel storage tank, and that will probably go right here. And so this will just be a paved area, transition down a little bit, just a paved area, and then vegetated hillside before you get to the main line. And finally have installed my tunnel portal for Simpson Tunnel coming north out of Valier towards Riker Yard, and just temporarily have this top piece of foam on here, just till I figure out how the top of the tunnel is going to work. But everything else is glued in, and I'm just going to run this scenery all the way up to the bottom of the upper deck, just to hide the helix. I'll probably put some type of fascia out here on at least part of the helix. I think I'll leave some open just so you can see the progress of your train, and it's accessible from the inside without too much trouble. And knock on wood, I have not had a derailment on the helix since I've installed it, so hopefully that trend continues. But really starting to create the feel of a big rock cut. This is probably one of the most or longest neglected areas of scenery, so happy to finally get progress on this. Obviously it doesn't look great as pink foam, and I came in and scored all of the faces to make it look like just pure rock cut, not just little outcroppings. This area is just pure cut, and I stepped it with each layer of foam, or at least in some cases every other layer, to make it look like as they did the drilling and blasting, they did it in steps, which sometimes they do. I've never seen, other than by Google Maps, I've never seen Simpson Tunnel, and you really can't see the mouth of it. It doesn't have an arc leading into the tunnel, but again, we have to selectively compress and manipulate the design on our railroads to do. And while I intend to do a full video at some point focused solely on the F7s, I have mixed up a custom yellow and masked and airbrushed the top of the sill with the yellow stripe. So not a very complicated scheme, thankfully. I have some overspray on the sill, but the sills, as I mentioned before, actually were not present on the B&O F7s. I don't know if they just never had them or if they cut them off. So I will probably just come back in, mask the stripe a little bit, and then just paint the sill area completely flat black so it blends in with the tank, and then I'll the fuel tank, and then I'll weather it accordingly. I have a little bit of overspray onto the body, but not too bad. And that's the benefit of modeling units that were painted a while back, because by 1974 the F7s were in pretty rough shape, even though they had been repainted in the 60s, and all of the B&O F7s were actually scrapped in 1975. So anywhere I have some overspray, I think I can just come in. And also, as I mentioned, now at this point I think I'm going to move on to doing the grab irons, because previously in a video I showed how I had drilled some for the Walthers kits, but also some grab iron openings on the nose, just to mimic the prototype. And my concern is that with all the handling I'm going to need to do for the grab irons all over the place, I didn't want to have decals that I could somehow disturb inadvertently. So probably do grab irons next, and also did the other one. So I've got these two F7s underway here. Do the grab irons next, then get those painted up, and then do a final gloss coat wherever I'm going to have decals. Put the decals on, then flat coat or dull coat the whole thing, both units, and then weather them up. And then it's at that point it'll be time to assemble them, and hopefully by then I'll have at least the first one's decoder installed. I haven't started painting the trucks on the first one, but I do have the silver trucks for the one unit that actually did have silver trucks. So making progress on the F7s as well too. So hopefully before too long I'll keep going on the scenery. Thought I would just post a relatively short video just to capture some of the progress as I go. I thought about doing a time-lapse and just put the tripod over my shoulder, because a couple of folks have suggested that it was too bad I didn't catch any of the real-time progress on the F7s. If I think I'll be able to pull that off, I may consider it, but sometimes it's challenging to get a good angle. Otherwise you end up just looking at the back of my hands, which I'm sure nobody wants to see. And it's also just a little challenging to do some of the detail work and try and video it. But if I can figure out how to do it, I at least may do that for part. But certainly we'll do an update video as we keep going on these. That's it for now.